Hello everybody and welcome to Tabletop Bob, and welcome back to my Candlekeep Rankings video, part 2. I'll be going over the final 8 adventures of the book and discussing my final rankings and overall thoughts. If you haven't seen my Candlekeep Rankings part 1, where I talk about the first 9 adventures, go check that video out here. And as a review, I am ranking these books on a scale of 1 to 5 in 5 different categories: story, hook, NPCs, pacing, and combat. The adventure with the best of these elements gets an extra bonus point. Let's dive right into the video. Candlekeep Dekonstruction. Written by Amy Vorpal, developed by Christopher Perkins, edited by Scott Fitzgerald Gray. This might be the wackiest of all the adventures, but in a good way. The players are approached by an avowed custodian carrying a book. He dies reaching out to them for help and drops the book at their feet. Not knowing what to do, the characters seek out an avowed member and they find a dragonborn avowed who can help them. Additionally, the characters can choose to speak with the dead. At this point, 9th level, they probably have spells that might be able to communicate with the body. There's also a section for this in the book, which is very helpful to the DM. If the group speaks with the avowed, then they learn that this book should never have left the vault. It contains blueprints to all the buildings in Candlekeep. Bookmarked in the tome is the barn door, an old tower that no one uses anymore. Then, suddenly, there is a rumbling, an earthquake, that prompts the players to investigate on their own or as an agent of the avowed. The players ultimately find the custodians in the barn door tower with food and other unique inventions. The building has been refitted to become a rocket ship. You heard me correct. Stonky Knoptopper is a gnome avowed member who just wants to get out of here and go to space. He also has a following, a cult called the Livestock. They name each other after ridiculous farm word combinations. Some gems include donkey biscuit, duck bean, pig wheat, and alpaca macadamia nuts. Donkey biscuit, calm down right now.
Donkey biscuit? That can't be your actual name. It can't be.
They're a laughable bunch who pose virtually no threats to the players. In fact, one of the funniest moments is when they break into the barn door, only to find that they have seatbelted themselves into chairs. After discovering that there are weird controls and what seems to be a vehicle ready to leave, the players explore to the basement. They confront Stonky and his inventions called skitterwidgets. They're mechanical, dog-like creatures, and if the party beats Stonky and his creations, they can do a bunch of things to change the trajectory of the ship. They can start it, stop it, or make it launch into space. This could very well have 2 different endings, depending on how many clues the PCs find out, and if anyone can figure out Stonky's codes. While it's a hell of an entertaining read to me and my personality, I think this type of story is so cool. I could see some players thinking it's just a bit too much. There really isn't a downside to letting Stonky get away, either, other than the fact that he's stealing some of the Candlekeep books. Also, some players expect the game to be a bit more serious. If you have players that feel that way, then this is definitely not the story for them. The hook is arguably the weakest part of the module. It hopes that the players will be interested in exploring for free because they care about Candlekeep. 3 out of 5. Cool NPCs. Although they mostly fall on the humorous side, they are fun to roleplay. 4 out of 5. Pacing is pretty good. There could be some meandering, as they might not know what to do once they are in the ship. Combat was decent, if not a bit too easy. None of the cult members are actually threatening. There are lightning golems that protect the control room to the rocket. The real challenge is the skitterwidgets. They're unique to this book, and that's plus. 4 out of 5. In total, this humorous adventure has a nice theme. It's a bit on the lighter side, and the easier side too, so it can be run as a change of pace one-shot. I really enjoyed running it and seeing the looks of confusion on my players' faces as they learned each part of the plan. 19 points is the final tally for Candlekeep Dekonstruction. Zikran's Zephyrean Tome. Written by Taimur Remen, developed and edited by Christopher Perkins. The players find Zikran's Zephyrean Tome while researching topics about extraplanar travel, Jinn, or Denzians of the Inner Planes. It's a book that has a lock on it. No mage at Candlekeep has been able to open it, so it sits idly on the shelves of the library. Little do the avowed know there is a genie trapped inside that opens when it senses a person or a group of people that would be willing to steal the book from Candlekeep. Ultimately, the genie opens the book and presents itself to the party. The PCs are persuaded to free the genie with the offer of a wish spell. That is a pretty sweet reward at 10th level. The players speak with the genie named Guzre Azam. They are told that the genie's master, Zikran, trapped him here because the genie refused to grant his magic to Zikran's creations. Zikran is an archmage and an inventor. Once the genie spills all the information, the players can head to the only place that the genie knows to go, Zikran's old laboratory. When they approach the cavern where the laboratory is located, it begins to feel like the start of a dungeon crawl. However, this is actually just a flooded 4-room cavern. The lab has long been abandoned, and a bronze dragon has now taken over the cave as its new lair. The dragon, named Ashgarleth, is a bronze, quirky dragon who loves tales of the high seas. He will have a conversation with any PC as long as they aren't threatening. The dragon will allow the party to explore the old lab. There they can find notes and locations on certain maps. These clues will lead the group to Zikran's cloud giant fortress and foreshadow his powerful weapon. More to come on that as well. The characters must then travel to the cloud peaks. There's an entire scene about climbing the mountain with encounters for each day of the journey. Alternatively, you can have the dragon, Ashgarleth, fly the group to speed up the travel and help with the pace of this adventure. Finally, the party reaches Zikran's new fortress, a cloud giant's abandoned keep. Or is it abandoned? In fact, it is actually a run-down fortress that was once inhabited by cloud giants. Now their ghosts roam the ancient halls of this keep. There's even a new stat block for the cloud giant ghost. So you would think that the party will need to eventually fight them. Well, no, sort of. Normally, the giants are just roaming the halls aimlessly. If they disrespect the giants by messing with the items in the keep, the giants will attack. Or sometimes just simply interrupting their card game in the mess hall. But it is seriously a good way to throw a scary threat at the group, but if they're smart and not murder hobos, they can avoid the combats. After searching around, the players will find that Zikran is located in his new laboratory, which is located in the basement of the fortress. As for Zikran, he is an archmage and has a crazy spell list. I suggest you read through all the spells and possibilities before running this combat. Also, don't hold back. Use time stops so Zikran can power up and get ready to blast the players with all of his damage-dealing spells. He also has bodyguards. There are elementals that have been summoned to protect him. To top the combat off, there's a massive cannon that shoots at initiative 20. Zikran has the remote control to this invention of his. Zikran will surrender rather than die and release the genie. Or the players can choose to kill him and release Guzre to get their wish spell. Ratings. The story gets a solid 4 for me. It was interesting, and I really love the theme of this adventure. However, the motivations of Zikran are very basic, and why he left the tome anywhere so that Candlekeep could get their hands on it seems like a plot hole. It's not that important, and the players may not even notice, but I did. The hook for the story is great. 5 out of 5. Wish is one of the best carrots on a stick that you can entice the players with, but your players may end up getting greedy and ask for more than one wish spell, which can be problematic depending if this is being run as a one-shot or a longer campaign. NPCs. I only gave it a 4 because there aren't too many. Ashgarleth is fun, but ultimately doesn't have much to do with the story. Zikran can be played like a maniacal, evil wizard, but there isn't too much to go on. Pacing is the real issue here. Heading to the old lab feels like it was just jammed into the module to add a bit of mystery, because if Guzre would know where Zikran is, then there would be 0 mystery. But I will say, as a DM, it can be very hard to run this high-level mage because they have access to so many spells. I always thought running high-level spellcasters is tough if you don't run them from level 1. This is really the case here. Since Zikran doesn't have that many hit points, it does feel like the characters can gang up on him, and if they are doing that, they will be successful. Overall, I gave it a 4 out of 5 in combat. Final rating for Zikran's Zephyrean Tome? A 20 spot. The Curious Tale of Wisteria Vale. Written by Kiana Shaw, developed and edited by Christopher Perkins and Hannah Rose. The story assumes that the group is hired by a Harper mage named Rilia. The Harpers have imprisoned a Harper bard who has become corrupted by a dark and evil artifact. The background to the story is a bit vague and does not mention the crystal that much, so you can go ahead and fill in the gaps here on your own. Since the Harpers do not want to kill the bard, whose name is Errant Quill, they imprison him in a demiplane located in the book until a cure for his powerful curse could be found. The PC's job is to now deliver that antidote. The Harpers have created a dagger imbued with healing magic. This dagger, the Harpers believe, can cure Quill, and he can come home once the cure is administered. If Quill is cut by the dagger, he will have the curse removed, and the demiplane in the book will close. Simple, right? The characters enter Wisteria Vale, the town in the book, and meet constructed commoners. These are not real people and have very weird reactions when characters ask them questions about their reality. The characters can approach Quill's manor in this fictional tale and join the ball that is happening. Players can also be invited by friendly townsfolk. Once in the story, the party begins to realize that all is not well with this demiplane. There are events that can occur that make things seem a bit off. Random color changes, weird weather patterns, and strange sensory events occur. The players eventually realize through exploration of the manor that a beholder named Renacor has infiltrated this demiplane. You see, this creature has one massive eyeball in the center and many stalks with eyes protruding.
I immediately go back.
Yeah. Yep. Eventually, players learn that Quill is actually a prisoner of the Beholder, locked in magical pictures. These pictures are scattered throughout the manor, and they act like Quill's prison. Players have a lot of freedom during this adventure to attack the Beholder first, or they can go into the pictures before the final Beholder fight. In the end, Quill can get released, and the Beholder will attack. This is a very satisfying combat, as Quill is actually magically invincible, so the players cannot actually harm him with their dagger unless he consents. Fortunately for the players, this immunity does not last while in the anti-magic cone of the Beholder. So ideally, your final combat will be players trying to stab Quill in and out of an anti-magic field. But most players don't want to be in an anti-magic field as it messes with their abilities and gear too. It's actually an ingenious combat mechanic. All around, this is an incredible fight scene between Beholder's eye beams and Quill's magic. The players are in for a fantastic, dynamic combat. After freeing Quill, or killing Quill, the characters can be transported back to Candlekeep. The ratings are overall high for this one. As I said, it's a very creative story, one that has a very serious and dangerous mission with a huge plot twist. The reason the Beholder is here in the first place is because it's actually dreaming. The adventure story is so cool. It feels very epic, but also contained. 5 out of 5. The hook for this adventure is good. It does hinge on giving the players a background motivation by hiring them ahead of time, but it really works for this one shot. In fact, when I ran it, I altered this hook slightly. I gave each character a secret goal or motivation, and it really added to the hook. You can check the stream that I did on this for the full video. The NPCs were also solid. Quill and the Beholder are fun to roleplay, so are the townsfolk. 4 out of 5. When it comes to pacing, I had to give this one a 4. The sandbox nature means that the players can be dragged down in excess social encounters with everyone they meet. The combat, however, is superb. It's so dynamic and clever. Dodging the Beholder eye rays and fighting the powerful bard at the same time is a super cool concept. Also, Quill may not trust the party, so it's really a three-way battle in the end. There are other opportunities for combat too, ones I didn't mention in my general review. There are stone golems and animated suits of armor that wander the halls if the players start to explore places that are typically off limits. Additionally, the picture frames have 2 combat encounters which are very potent when faced head-on. Again, these dynamic combats that don't always need to involve just beating something until its hit points are gone make running this game fun. 5 out of 5, and the best combat award goes to Wisteria Vale. All in all, this is a tight adventure with fantastic concepts and combat. It really hits all 3 pillars of the game, and I cannot recommend it enough. 23 points total. The Book of Inner Alchemy, written by Daniel Kwan, developed and edited by Hannah Rose. This book has an excellent use of theme. It's basically an old kung fu movie transplanted into the D&D world. The Asian influence is not only apparent, but intentional, showcasing Asian culture and expanding the concept of ki or chi in D&D. It was really nice to see that representation in an official product. The story is quite simple. A group of monks called the Immortal Lotus, led by a legendary monk named Bak Mei, broke into Candlekeep's vaults and stole pages from the Book of Inner Alchemy. The heroes are tasked by the Avowed to recover the pages, as they may contain designs and instructions for crafting a powerful artifact. Although there isn't much of a mystery here, there is a bit of a ticking clock element to this, as the artifact, if were created, would give the bearer incredible power, including, perhaps, invincibility. The heroes find some clues at the Candlekeep vaults, like a symbol of the immortal lotus at the crime scene, and head to their base of operations in the Cloakwood. As they approach, they find some dryads who speak to the evil deeds of the immortal lotus. They feed dead bodies to these black puddings which are destroying the woods that they live in. Eventually, the party will arrive at the compound and, in classic film style, fight one student of Bachme after another. These characters introduce themselves. They have personalized moves and stats. All very cool. Fighting alongside these NPCs are a stat block for the Immortal Lotus Monk, which is also pretty strong because they utilize a force strike that can knock people prone. After defeating the disciples, the party fights Bachme in his jagged sanctum. The PCs can ultimately defeat him and return the pages before the artifact called the Gloves of Soul Catching have been crafted. I feel like this game, more than others, was hard to be subjective. I pushed the idea to my players to run an entire monk party. Each player ran a different subclass and showed off their own style. But if I were to rate this book honestly, I'd have to take the added and player-based elements out of the equation. I rated the story a 3. It gets so much credit for theme and representation, but as mysteries go, there is very little. The group is pointed in a direction and bam, they start fighting. Also, the gloves, while they are a nasty item in the hands of a monk, they aren't something that will end the world or bring about some great evil in the realm. It's really not much of an emergency. Having the group of all monks, I think, made this more personal. I believe the PC's monasteries would want this wrong righted. That's why I had to give the hook, as the book presents it, a 3 out of 5. I can't see a traditional party feeling the intrinsic desire to complete this mission, other than for the game's sake, and perhaps gold or treasure that Candlekeep promised. NPCs are fantastic, 5 out of 5. I really considered giving this adventure the award for NPCs because of how flavorful the Immortal Lotus Monk characters were. Jade Tigress, Steel Crane, and Bachme were awesome villains. The Dryads were a nice touch to give some other motivations, and were able to provide an ally or healing if necessary. Pacing of the adventure was solid. The group was pointed in the right direction and then made their way to Bachme. However, it is a bit combat heavy, and as a result, this adventure could take longer than expected. 4 out of 5. Finally, for combat, I went with 4 out of 5. The fights were very cool, and as I said, the dynamic themes of each NPC made them very interesting. However, the rest of the monk enemies were a bit tedious. So many stunning strikes and force strikes make this combat a bit too one-sided if saves go poorly. Also, not a big fan of stunning the PCs. No one likes to lose their turn. Now I know, it's a decent consequence to an action, but it isn't fun to have to wait an extra 10 minutes between your turn. Additionally, while the combats were hard, I actually felt like Bachme, as written, is a bit underwhelming. I gave him the Gloves of Soul Stealing, and this actually made the fight with the 4 PCs go right down to the wire. Overall, this was a very fun adventure, and I do suggest that you mention your players that an all-monk group would be so much fun. If you run your regular group through this, my suggestion would be to try to add a bit of mystery by having him steal the entire book. I know that in these adventures, the PCs are expected to all find the book at the beginning, but this will help a little bit with the mystery aspect, and make it more important to get the book back, because this contains the secrets of Chi. 19 for the overall score of the Book of Inner Alchemy. The Canopic Being. Written by Jennifer Kretschmer, developed and edited by Scott Fitzgerald Gray and Christopher Perkins. This one had me excited from page 1. When I read the hook, I was hooked. The players are called to meet with one avowed member about a missing scribe at the library. The players are told that the avowed member was last seen with the book, The Canopic Being, in her quarters. It contains a dark ritual for creating mummy lords and other theories like placing organs in living canopic jars, aka people. At the back of the book is a list of people who have donated their organs to Vale, the Oracle of Tashalar. The PCs can ask the avowed why they are being presented with this mission, and the avowed will show the PCs the list. Each character is listed in the back of the book as a transplant volunteer. This is going to have your PCs wondering, did I agree to something like this? How did our names get there? The motivation keeps them guessing until the very end. They meet a priest at a temple in Tashalar who allows the party to get into Valen's private sanctum, a sealed demiplane. No teleportation or conjuring from other planes of existence is allowed here. Be careful with how you rule this. I will elaborate a little bit later, but I may have inadvertently nerfed one of my players pretty hard. Once they enter the sanctum, the PCs are greeted by Alessia, an NPC who is one of Valen's chosen. She instructs them to wander the dungeon, and eventually, Valen will greet them when the time is right. The PCs find a whole bunch of stuff in this place. There's a sun sword, guarded by Tao, a ritual pool to undo the canopic process, and even a room that lets them relive their pasts. Ultimately, the party comes across the canopic jars that contain various body parts of the living canopic beings. The PCs can uncover the only true way to destroy Valen, who has become a mummy lord. The only way to kill her is to kill the beings whom are being used like canopic jars. There are large canopic golems, who are the other beings that contain Valen's organs. They were turned into golems unlike Alessia. The golems are nasty in combat and shrug off most magic damage. After the PCs defeat Valen, they can leave the sanctum and hopefully gain back some of their sense of free will. In all honesty, I really like this one, but it was a bit hard to read and follow what was going on. It is long-winded, and it feels like the PCs need to talk to someone, to talk to someone, to talk to someone. Many of these stories have similar structures like this, but there are literally 5 people in this flowchart. The Avowed ask the PCs about missing Avowed. Then they talk to the Oracle at the temple. Then the Oracle tells them to talk to Alessia. Then they talk to Valen. The way it's written, it's very unclear if Valen actually portended the events or if it was just a ruse to get the PCs to come. Now, I'm fine with the players not knowing this, but as the Dungeon Master, I feel like we should know. Overall, the story was unique and creative, but there were some logical issues with it. 4 out of 5. The hook is excellent. In fact, I gave a bonus point because it is mysterious and really draws the characters in. How did their names get in the book? Does this mean that they have no free will? Can they stop this from happening? Did it happen already? By going to meet Valen, are they falling right into a trap? Overall, this is the most non-railroad, but still forceful hooks in the game. And it was very deserving of the hook bonus point. NPCs lacked a bit in this one. I gave it a 3 because I think Valen is cool, but the other members, including Alessia, just come off a bit annoying to the PCs. No one likes smug, know-it-all villains, but they can make great bad guys. However, when they're not the main villain, or not even evil, it just doesn't feel right. There isn't much development to these side characters either. Outside of the 3 that I just mentioned, there aren't many others at all. Pacing gets a 3 out of 5. I debated a 2 on this one. It isn't a slow adventure per se, but the map is huge, with long corridors for no reason. The players can tend to go super slow and are very cautious every step of the way. At times, I just wanted to tell the players, I'll move your tokens for some stretches just to move things along. There's also maybe too much freedom, and the players may miss key pieces of information which will ultimately limit the ending possibilities. Combat. While I really enjoyed the combat here, it may just be plain unfair for non-optimized groups, or groups that rely heavily on teleporting and conjuring. Now, I may have interpreted this rule too strictly. You can make up your own mind here. The rule about the Sanctum's extra-dimensional interference reads as such. The tomb is warded against teleportation, and creatures inside can't travel using teleportation or extra-dimensional or interplanar means. To me, this spell means that if you remove something from this plane in any way, that spell is not allowed. This would include short teleportation spells like Misty Step or Dimension Door. Additionally, anything from another plane cannot be summoned here, as it needs permission from Valen. So any summoning spell would not work, right? I don't know. Maybe I was a harsh DM, but it is a 13th level adventure, so I don't know what the intention was here. Now, of course, I happen to have a Horizon Walker Ranger, and I felt like the bad DM for making his abilities not work at all. I tried to warn him earlier that day without giving any information about the adventure. He didn't take the hint, and he ran that character anyway. And afterwards, I had a case of the feel-bads. Additionally, the Canopic Golems are so cool, but they can really nerf the wizards and other arcane casters in the group. All spells of 7th level or lower, which is every spell that the PCs will have, doesn't work against these things. It repels spells and attacks automatically, and can even redirect them to other PCs. When the Eldritch Blast would hit him directly in the center of his chest, it just repels the spell away from him, and it's gonna come back towards the group. Joey, you can roll your damage. It's gonna hit Tim.
What? No.
Yep.
Oh my god. So
Roll
do
your
I roll
damage.
the crit damage?
Yep. Finally, spells with saving throws are auto passes for them. It is insane, but it is really cool and thematic at the same time. Just be careful because this can be too deadly for some parties to handle. Overall, the Canopic Being clocks in with a total score of 20 points. The Scrivener's Tale, written by Brandeis Stoddard, developed by Christopher Perkins, edited by Scott Fitzgerald Gray. This was the 14th level adventure, and it feels like a 14th level adventure. The final 3 were actually all excellent for challenging those high-level characters which can, at this point, seem like demigods. The characters locate the Scrivener's Tale by accident. An avowed scribe accidentally puts this book in with the group's pile that they were gathering for them. The party reads the book, and immediately the words of the Scrivener's Tale begin to appear like tattoos, covering about 20% of their body. They just need to start reading it for this to happen. Everyone in the party gets this mark, which means that if an avowed or anyone else would be in the vicinity, they probably should get it too. The actual book is a cautionary tale. Is it fact or fiction? That is unknown. But it describes the protagonist, the Shadow Glass Princess. Probably in Eladrin, but then transformed into a powerful archfey, this Shadow Glass Princess is looking for revenge on the Gloaming Court. After reading the book, the players can make all sorts of spells and ability checks to gain more information about this Scrivener's Tale. There is a short guide in the module as to what information to give the players if they have commune or legend lore spells. Tips of this nature are very helpful to the Dungeon Master. The Avowed will tell the players to head to Baldur's Gate in order to speak with Maykill Rillen, the one who donated this book to Candlekeep. Perhaps he knows how to reverse the curse. Oh, and by the way, the curse is sick. You can make the PCs make a DC 20 Charisma saving throw every third dawn, or more frequently if that is what you want. The mark of the Scrivener is absolutely debilitating. Each step of the chart has a benefit too, but quickly the negatives start to outweigh it. Once they reach the 4th stage, the benefit is you cease to age naturally and magical aging no longer affects you. But the drawback is that you become as brittle as glass. You gain vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and effects that grant you resistance or immunity to such are suppressed. This can be nasty if the players hit this level. The following step on the mark is basically death as you're turned into a Shadow Glass statue. The players find Maykill's estate, where his niece Evandre lives now. She can show the PCs Maykill's belongings and provide insight into his debt problems. Here they will uncover more of the mystery and find that Maykill traveled to a place called the Haven of the Red Quill, likely where the PCs will have to go next to find the cure to their curse. When the PCs travel to this location, many days get passed, so they need to take more saves against the mark. If they fail, the mark grows, eventually covering their whole body when they die. The Haven of the Red Quill is the location of the Scrivener's ghost, and the location where the PCs can perform a ritual in releasing Nintra. This is the only way to rid themselves of the mark of the Scrivener. What is confusing here, and I had to read many times, is that the ghost basically is a guardian of the tomb. Stone golems and mummies also protect it with him. The ghost will ultimately reveal that the Archfey is trapped in the book. Using this chamber to release her will spell danger for the entire realm. If they choose to fight her, they can do so by releasing her from the book. A big battle ensues as she summons Shadowglass warriors, and she has lair actions here too. If the players defeat her, they lose their curse and save the world. The story gets a 4 out of 5 from me. It was interesting, and there was definitely some good investigation opportunities. It was just a bit confusing, and quite hard to read. I didn't really understand the motivations of Nintra. Obviously she wants to escape, but the background conflict between her and the Gloaming Court isn't really explained enough that I, as the DM, felt like I knew what was going on. If you know nothing about the Feywild, then this is also tricky because the adventure doesn't really explain any of the Fey terms and locations or the drama that's going on between the Shadowglass Princess and this Gloaming Court. The hook, however, is excellent. A curse that isn't fully understood, cannot be removed, and requires further investigation. Also gets progressively worse by the day, so time is a factor here. I couldn't give it the best hook because it just seems a bit odd that if one character reads the book, everyone around them in an unspecified range is also afflicted? I don't know. It just seems a bit confusing again, and I was tempted to give the curse just to the person who read the book or anyone who was actively listening, but I stayed true to the book for the stream. 5 out of 5. NPCs, well, there aren't many. Evandre is cool, and my PCs even brought her along for the trip. But really, that's it. Nintra's a great villain, but as I stated, her motivations aren't fully explained to the DM. I love that they allowed her to visit the PCs in their dreams, though. She's sort of present throughout the adventure this way. A 3 out of 5. Pacing, I had to go with a 3 here. It's a whole ton of investigation and travel in the first half of the adventure. Then it's 1 to 3 possible combats in rapid-fire succession. And those combats take forever, because there are tons of HP to chew through. In fact, there's roughly 1,000 hit points in the final combat alone. Speaking of combat, this one was very challenging. I think it's appropriate for level 14, but if you feel like your group isn't optimized or you only have 2 or 3 PCs, then I predict this will be a TPK. Nintra is so powerful on her own, and she can also expedite the Scrivener's Mark effects. If you have any PCs at their 4th level tier, then her Shadow Glass Warrior minions will annihilate that PC. First one. Second one. Third one. Each one gets 3 attacks, Tim.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
So the first one is going to do 14 piercing, which doubles to 28. The second one is 8, which doubles to 16. Last one does 13, which doubles to 26. So, well, it's 14 plus 8 is 22, 32, 35. So 35 doubled, 70. Yeah. Yep, that's one of them. These minions use the Gladiator stat block. 3 attacks per turn, 2d6 or 2d8 plus 4 damage. A shield attack, parry, 112 hit points, and there's 6 of them. If the characters are vulnerable to the damage at this point, then this will be a short-lived combat. Your 14th level characters will be challenged. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Overall, the Scrivener's Tale lands pretty high with a 19-point total. Alkazaar's Appendix. Written by Adam Lee, developed by Michelle Carter and Christopher Perkins, edited by Michelle Carter. Oh boy, this was a really great story. It's a bit hard to summarize because it's pretty vast and epic, but I will do my best to be concise here. Alkazaar's Appendix is a slim volume, accompanied by a thicker tome titled Alkazaar's Thrilling Tales. In this tome, Alkazaar, the legendary hero, chronicled his numerous heroic exploits. He bequeathed these books to Candlekeep and gifted the Avowed with a series of live storytelling sessions. Alkazaar is long since retired, but urges the reader of the Appendix to finish a quest that even he could not complete. The PCs can learn that Alkazaar found a stone golem of legend called the Sapphire Sentinel. He found this golem in the Anauroch Desert. The Badin, a people that live here, guide Alkazaar and the golem, which is the key to opening a tomb where a nether scroll is stored. The lost city that he was looking for was called Aasimar. Purple worms thwarted his journey, and he was never able to finish it. For those of you who don't know, the nether scroll, which the characters will ultimately discover, is an ancient and extremely powerful artifact. It grants the reader immense power and control over magic. Therefore, it's a pretty decent hook, but the characters just need to read the book and decide that they ultimately want to go. Once they discover the book is actually a portal to the golem, the party enters the book and is transported into the Anauroch Desert. From there, a Badin guide, Shamir, and his grandson, Pesh, lead the group. All 3 of the NPCs are delightful, as the grandson is excitable and optimistic, the grandfather is weary and cautious, and the golem cannot speak and makes gestures to communicate. The Badin guides lead the party and the Sapphire Sentinel to the Rainbow Hall, where they discover a location of the Nether Scroll and fight a purple worm. They also see frescoes that depict more of what happened to the Nether Scroll. A blue dragon named Zikran wanted it. In order to protect the scroll, Prince Hamukai of the Netherese buried himself in a tomb, along with the scroll. Powerful magic wardings were created to seal him in the mastaba of the city. Zikran determined to wait all eternity to get the scroll, so she finds a way to become a Dracolich and is now a permanent fixture of the mastaba, waiting for one day the magic to wear off. Next, the group heads to the ancient ruins of Aasimar to eventually face off against the said Dracolich and her minions in an epic battle for the scroll. What I left out of this summary is that the adventure, as stated, is only a small part of what's written. The author went into great detail about the background of the adventure, which is very helpful for the DM. Also, at every stage of this module, there are multiple options for random encounters, combats, skill challenges, extra PCs to meet, and complications. You can even search through worm poop to find valuable items.
You will remember to wash your hands before you eat anything.
And there's a classic Sphinx with a riddle. There's enough here to stretch this into it very easily a multi-shot of 3 to 5 adventures at minimum. I even think this could be an entire arc in your own home campaign. It's because of this that I decided to give the award for Best Story to Alkazaar's Appendix. It's so rich and well developed, but it could also be adapted to fit the needs of the time crunch of your group. It's quite an epic tale, and the fact that I completed it in about 4.5 hours was remarkable. The hook. I went with a 4. The scroll is great bait for the PCs, but it lacks any real call to action. Since the PCs are 15th level, the way I ran it was basically that they acted like rock stars at Candlekeep. People kept coming up to them asking for handshakes and autographs. When one young avowed girl, the tiefling named Irony, asks the characters to read the book, she convinces them to complete her favorite adventure, the failed quest, and the final regret of her hero, Alkazaar. A 5 out of 5 for NPCs, they all rocked. The Badine guides were so fun to roleplay. It's kind of fun to have two PCs that are foils to each other, the cautious grandfather, the ambitious grandson. The golem is hilarious because it cannot speak. This leads to great role-playing opportunities for the entire party. Finally, the Draco Lich, Zikran, is well written, and I appreciate the determined nature of this dragon that is willing to wait this scroll out for all eternity. The pacing was tricky. I went with a 4 only because no matter which way you slice it, it's on the long side. However, it all depends on how many travel encounters and optional encounters you decide to include. I think that if you're an inexperienced dungeon master at high level play, and you don't estimate the time each encounter will take correctly, this could easily end up being 6 hours of gaming. The combats in this one were excellent. I ran it with only 3 players, and they were relatively optimized. It got a bit dicey for a stretch, so I think that with 4 or 5 typical builds, this would be spot-on, appropriate, and very engaging combats. Purple worms, a sphinx, Draco Lich. These are all iconic monsters to fight. 5 out of 5. Well, that brings Alkazaar's Appendix to a total of 24 points. Now we head to the final adventure in the book, Xanthoria. Xanthoria. Written by Tony Winslow Brill. Developed by Bill Benham and Christopher Perkins. Edited by Kim Mohan. Xanthoria is the highest level adventure in the book. It's designed for 16th level, and I think it does a nice job of getting the PCs to combats quickly and challenging them appropriately. The story is rather straightforward. There's a widespread fungal plague that is destroying food sources and killing people and turning them to fungal zombies. So the stakes are pretty high here. The PCs were invited to the Candlekeep because they are heroes of legend. The Avowed were given a book that may contain information about ending the plague. The book is titled Xanthoria, and it contains the writings of a druid by that name who began to experiment with dark magic, attempting to gain immortality. It's possible that in her efforts, she caused the fungal curse on the lands. The PCs are told the location of where the book was found, and they head there. Easy peasy. Once they get to the location, the party is basically entering an 11-room cave crawl. At the entrance to the cave, they meet a confused and weeping sprite named Thunderwing. She doesn't remember the past few days and for some reason just knows that her best friend Xanthoria is in trouble. She will start to recall information as the PCs explore the caves with her. Inside, the party is going to fight all different sorts of fungal abominations that were created by Xanthoria to protect her lair. Most of these enemies are reskinned fungal versions of creatures in the monster manual. Some of the highlights include a Death Tyrant, a Death Knight, Behirs, Mummy Lords, Vrox, and even a Purple Worm again. Once they find Xanthoria's laboratory, they get filled in on the rest of the mystery. She transformed herself into a Lichen Lich. This is a new monster that was created with the new stat block too. She has lair actions and a bunch of minions at her disposal in the final battle. If the heroes succeed and defeat her, they will need to locate her phylactery. Xanthoria's notes will reveal that she has a living phylactery, Thunderwing. The pieces need to basically convince the sprite to allow itself to be killed. Pretty cool plot twist at the end here. On to the final ratings of the book. First, I want to just make a quick statement here. As I was reviewing these, it didn't kind of strike me when I was running them, but as I was reviewing them, I noticed that Xanthoria is kind of like the Canopic Being. Both of them have characters go to an area, a big dungeon crawl. They fight a bunch of different monsters, and they have to kill something that has a living phylactery. I thought it was really interesting that two very high level adventures close to each other in the book have a very similar premise. You'll see when I do the final ratings where Xanthoria and the Canopic Being finally rank at, and I'll give you my explanations then. So I went straight 4s down the line with this one. There was nothing to throw in that would slow down the pace. The cave map is just about the right size with a natural flow, allowing for 1 or 2 encounters to be bypassed. There are appropriate challenges, although I would have liked some unique monsters instead of fungus reskins. Side note, the virtual tabletop tokens on Roll20 are literally tokens that say things like fungal servant. There's no artwork, which is really lame. But all in all, I really enjoyed Xanthoria. It might just be the most balanced adventure of them all. 20 points, final score. All right, we finally made it. Now before breaking down the final rankings, I just want to say a thank you to you for watching my content. I've been on YouTube for just over a year now, and I've been overwhelmed by the genuine interest in the channel by you, the viewer. I appreciate every kind word in the comments, and I do try to respond to them all. I have so much more in store for the future of the channel, so stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Now we come to the final ranking. There were inevitably many ties on the list. When it came down to it, I just had a gut feeling as to which ones I liked slightly more, and I created my draft of my final rankings. However, as I created both of these videos and revisited the adventures, I felt like I found a way to put some words down as to my tie-breaking decisions. So, as I reveal each rank, if there was a tie, I will describe my thought process. With 12 points, ranking number 17 is the Book of the Raven. No doubt, this was my least favorite for so many reasons that I refuse to discuss now. Number 16. With 16 points, we have Mazfroth's Mighty Digressions. Number 15, also with 16 points, is Sarah of Yellowcrest Manor. Now, despite having poor pacing, Sarah has a cohesive story and a satisfying conclusion. Mazfroth's most likely will end without that. Ranking at number 14 with 17 points is Lore of Larue. At 13, also tied with 17 points, is the Book of Cylinders. The tiebreaker for me came down to DM prep. In order to make Lore of Larue make sense to your players and keep the threat of death in the game, the DM should adapt the material. Book of Cylinders does not need that. It is a much more straightforward adventure that doesn't put as much strain on the DM. In a 3-way tie at 19 points, we have number 12, Candlekeep Dekonstruction, 11, The Book of Inner Alchemy, and 10, The Scrivener's Tale. Candlekeep Dekonstruction is great, but the silliness doesn't hit everyone the same. Humor can be very subjective. The Scrivener's Tale barely beats out The Book of Inner Alchemy, but this was truly the ultimate coin toss in my opinion. Next we go to another 3-way tie with 20 points this time. The Canopic Being ranks number 9. Zikran's Zephyrean Tome at number 8, and Xanthoria at number 7. The hook of the Canopic Being was fantastic, but if I'm being realistic here, it did have 2 3s in other categories. More low-end scores than either Zikran's or Xanthoria, and it also feels very much like Xanthoria with the living phylactery plot thread. I went with the balance of Xanthoria that I believe makes it more enjoyable to run from the DM perspective. It's also very hard to make a balanced epic level adventure. We need more content like this in this tier of play. Now we get into the upper echelon of adventures, the cream of the crop. All of the top 6 adventures I not only would run again, I most definitely will run them at some point. In fact, I already have run some of them again, and I've found them just as enjoyable. Clocking in at number 6 with 22 points, we have A Deep and Creeping Darkness. Tied at 22 points, at the number 5 spot, is The Price of Beauty. Both of these adventures are terrific. It's hard to compare them because of their style. I gave the nod to Beauty because of its near-flawless sandbox style. It can be so hard to make the PCs feel like they aren't on a railroad in a one-shot. This does such a great job of flipping that script. Number 4. At 23 points, we have The Curious Tale of Wisteria Vale. This is the best we got sucked into a book adventure in the module. There were so many epic moments with this one. Number 3, also with 23 points, is The Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces. The only issue with this adventure is it has a slightly weak hook. Aside from that, the rest of the adventure is near perfect in every other way. In fact, this is the ultimate level 1 adventure that I've ever seen published. It hits all aspects of the game so well and can introduce new players to D&D in a new and refreshing way. It's because of this that I gave the nod to Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces. And now we come to the final 2. Both of these adventures are absolutely legendary. They tied with a total of 24 points, and I thought about this decision for weeks. Finishing in second place overall, we have Alkazaar's Appendix. This adventure has the ultimate story in the book. It is deep, fleshed out, and can provide your group with far more than a one-shot's worth of material. I definitely recommend running this if you have a high-level group and are having a hard time finding material that's appropriate for them. But there could only be one. Finishing at the top of my Candlekeep rankings is none other than Shemshime's Bedtime Rhyme. This adventure is so unique. I can't really recall running an adventure that felt so different than this one. The pacing is flawless, allowing the DM to, in a way that doesn't feel controlling, dictate the pace of the game. The horror elements that are sprinkled in fit perfectly. The party is desperately searching for clues and a way out of this in escape room style, just hoping they can figure out how to kill Shemshime before it's too late. There's so much going on in this seemingly simplistic one-shot, so many little attention to detail moments that as a DM, you'll marvel at. This adventure is the true king of one-shots. It's for these reasons that it tops my list. Well, that about does it for me and my rankings, but tell me what you think. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. Do you agree with my rankings now that you've heard all of my thoughts? Which adventure was your favorite? And which are you excited to try now that you've seen the review of all of them? Thanks for watching. I will see you all on the tabletop.